Got it. Got it.
Hello and welcome to the Paper Prototypes podcast. I'm here with. Can I call you Matt? Is that what we want to
Matt
work with?
is cool. Totally
All right.
cool.
I'm here with Matt, the developer of Severed Steel and Echo Point Nova, a soon-to-be released game. What's the release schedule looking like for that one so far?
I'm hoping for quarter 1 of next year, so maybe like March of next year. But I've also been working a lot on updates for my last game, Severed Steel. So uh, it's really whatever happens, happens. I'm hoping for quarter 1, but things might get pushed back because I'm having fun working on Severed Steel.
Sounds good. So this is going to be our first double build podcast episode. So first thing we're going to do is jump into Severed Steel. So Matt, how did you get started developing Severed Steel?
Yeah, Severed Steel came out of wanting to work. I kind of got it in my head that like I could try making games because at the time I was actually years ago I was teaching like game development at a middle school, but it was like using this little 2D program called Scratch, and it's
Oh my
pretty simple
god.
like visual. You
Not
know Scratch?
Scratch. Not
Oh,
Scratch.
that's so funny. How do you know Scratch?
It was part of like a after school like club where we had to build like a robot and then we didn't do anything with it because it was atrocious.
So okay, so wait, so in that Scratch programmed a physical robot in that?
Yeah, I guess the robot had the ability to use Scratch as one of its
Wait,
languages.
what was the name of the robot? Do you remember?
Oh, I have no idea, but it was one of those where it just had to like it had to do a maze, and so we were trying to program it to where if the sensor saw black, it would like turn, and then that was as far as we got because all of us were super
That's
busy.
funny. Well, because we had a one of our projects was to program a robot in Scratch, and I'm wondering if it was the same robot. But anyways, you weren't one of my students, were you?
No,
That would be
unless
pretty
you taught in
hilarious.
South Florida.
Definitely not, no. Anyways, but we did mostly just like game programming in Scratch, just because you can use Scratch to program computer games. And so I don't know, that kind of in a way taught me programming because I wasn't like formally trained in programming. So then I got it in my head that maybe I can make a game. And I first started like messing with open world RPGs, which I think a lot of indie devs do. At first, they want to make their dream game, and then I realized like, oh, this is gonna happen. Like, this is a massive project, and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I decided to go for kind of a smaller game, and I love first person shooters. So I'm like, all right, I'll just make a single player first person shooter. And so I started chipping away at that, and um, I started sharing GIFs of it online, and then it caught publishers' interest, and I talked to a few publishers and was rejected by a few publishers. And what eventually happened was I paired up with my publisher and worked on Severed Steel full time, and then it launched. So that's like the summary of Severed Steel.
And how did you come to design Severed Steel as like a? What were your inspirations for Severed Steel? Because I noticed it's a very, I guess I'd put it in like a Quake like in terms of movement.
Yeah, Quake. So definitely Quake inspired. Maybe more when I was a kid, I was really into Unreal Tournament, which was just Epic's version of Quake. That movement speed is very fun, and like the levels where they're more like the levels are kind of arena shaped. Like it's not like necessarily get from point A to point B. The levels are more like square shaped or round shaped, and you can kind of just go where you want when you want. You're just kind of duking it out with guys who can be around any corner, and it's like 360 degrees of combat. Um, I mean, a big inspiration was this mod called The Specialist for Half-Life, which was like a multiplayer shooter that was really inspired by like The Matrix and like John Woo movies, like super stylish combat and slow motion, being a badass. So kind of all those things kind of melded together to create the idea of Severed Steel.
So did you, when you started developing Severed Steel, did you know those were the mechanics you wanted to roll with, or did they develop organically as you just started doing playtesting?
Yeah, pretty much from the start, I knew I think the dive function was one of the first things I did, and I think slow mo was shortly after that. So I think I knew from the start I wanted it to be like a first person shooter with slow mo. But a lot of the features, like the character having one arm, wasn't something I thought of immediately. I've talked about it on other interviews, but it's kind of a funny story where it's just like I was really stumped on like how to make a good reload animation. So I was like, well, what if the character didn't have to reload? But I didn't like the idea of it being like Doom or like guns just have bottomless ammo. Like I still wanted the player to deal with magazine limits. So I was like, what if the character physically couldn't reload because she has only has like one arm maybe? Um, and I prototyped the gameplay, and that introduced all sorts of interesting gameplay things. And yeah, and that just kind of came from like trying to problem solve around my own limits. So it's, yeah, it's kind of a mix of like I had a vision at the start, but had to roll with my own limitations.
And how did you figure out level design while you were doing Severed Steel?
That was very difficult from the start. So Severus is weird because the levels they're built out of voxels, so the levels are kind of built like Minecraft in the sense of like it's just like a bunch of cubes kind of stacked on top of each other. And that's cool because it lets you the character gets an arm cannon, so that lets you like carve holes and like any geometry in the level can be destroyed. Just like any part of the Minecraft world can be destroyed. And that was hard because I didn't really have the voxel tool, the tool I used to build the voxel world, like the voxel technology, it was built for making landscapes. It wasn't really built for making like structures. So it was really hard to build levels because there weren't any real tools. Like I had to making levels was just a pain trying to figure out like what the right workflow was. So for the longest time, the game only had like 3 levels, and it was like every building a changing a level, making like a doorway or moving things around was just a nightmare. And then I always knew I wanted like a level editor for players to use, and I was like, there's no way players are gonna want to use build levels the way I do. It's a freaking nightmare. I hate building levels. At the time, a guy who goes by the name of Bloody, that's his Discord name, he was super interested in the project, and he was wondering, well, like, could I design levels somehow? Like, is there some way I can contribute? And there's this tool called Magica Voxel, which is just a way to edit voxel worlds. Um, like just make little voxel art. It's its own thing. It's not necessarily for games. It's just like a fun tool to make voxel things. And I said, well, why don't you try that? And he was able to design really cool levels with that. And so I was like, all right, well, why don't I just like essentially copy this tool? And so like I rebuilt that tool in Severed Steel, and it's Severed Steel has a level editor now and Steam Workshop support, and people make levels for it. And it's the tool set's built on Magic of Voxel, and that really opened up. I mean, then the level production really accelerated then because then Bloody could help me build levels, and other people could hop in and help build levels, and the tool was pretty intuitive. Um, and the tool set was huge, and that's one of the things in like game dev. Sorry, it's a really long answer, but
No, that's all
levels
good.
are yeah, levels are so important, and like sounds so dumb, but levels are built with like tools. So like so much of like I feel like a game's like how good the levels are, or just like how much of a pain in the ass the tools are to work with. And once we had that tool set up, it was pretty straightforward for people to like prototype levels, really simple, block out a level. Is it fun? Cool, polish it. If it's not fun, it was really easy to move things around. So I think getting the levels right was really a matter of iteration and just like trying a bunch of things and having a tool that made it easy to try a bunch of things.
Is that the same tool that you're using now on Echo Point Nova?
Very similar. Echo Point Nova is a bit different because it's like it's a big open world. Sever Steel is these small levels, where Echo Point Nova it's like a big open world, and my goal is for it to be one world. So there's a lot in Echo Point Nova um, that makes it so like you can see a level in the distance, and you can surf over to it, and while you're surfing it, there's no load screen. It just kind of loads in. So it's like the Severed Steel tools, but with like a lot more stuff to work with like a massive world and to like make that performance optimized. The tool set it still needs. I want that also to be workshop compatible, and I think it needs a bit more work till it's like super fun and friendly to use. But it's gonna be a lot. It's gonna be pretty similar to the Severed Steel's tool, yeah.
And were you worried at all that players might get overwhelmed by the amount of movement options when they first start Severed Steel?
At first, no. I thought like, oh, it made sense to me. It'll be fine. And then like after getting feedback from people, like the systems weren't clicking. Like, for example, like when you before the way the dive worked is you had the dive and then you had to press like a button to stand up. Like your character would dive and then slide and then you'd press the stand button to stand. Or when you ran out of ammo, your gun would just stop shooting. And you had to press a button to throw the weapon if you wanted to throw it. And then if you wanted to find a new weapon, you had to run over to the weapon, look at it, and press the pickup button. And there are all sorts of like so many actions required so many different key presses by players. It was not intuitive at all. So really I mean it was Jeff Luke who was at the time like worked game design at my publisher Digerati who suggested that like I make a lot more of these features automatic. Like if the character is out of ammo, just she will automatically throw the weapon at whoever she's looking at. And if there's a weapon near her feet, she'll automatically pick it up. And if you dive, when you're done with the dive, you'll automatically stand up. So a lot had to be done to just like make the player not have to think so much about every action they did, just to make it a lot more intuitive. And that only came with like a lot of playtesting and feedback and listening to other people's ideas.
So you'd say that playtesting was really important during the development of Severed Steel?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It took forever to find like the current game loop. It took a lot of like trimming. Like the game used to have like all these puzzles you'd have to solve, and there was a whole like codec system from like based on Metal Gear Solid's codec system where there are like two-way conversations on a radio. And there was like a compass. Like there wasn't I didn't like mark things on your HUD where to go. Like I'd give like verbal instructions and you'd have to like follow like, like go down the hallway and then look east and then in the corner of the room. Like I was trying to make it really like a simulation, like realistic and people just bounced off that. It was just such a drag. Like the feedback was always like the combat is super fun. Everything else is just like confusing and annoying. So honestly, most of the feedback was just telling me to like stop trying to do all these stupid things and just like focus on the combat.
How
Yeah, so
does
yeah,
it
feedback was essential.
how does it feel when to read reviews where some of them are like, yeah, the story's a little not there, considering you had to cut elements that might have added to that?
That's an interesting question. I think people are right in saying that there's not a lot of story and the story is there is vague. Um, I never really had a super like important story I felt I wanted to tell. So for me, it was like even if I had full reign to like put in the story I wanted to put in, I don't think it would have shown. Um, Adam at Digerati, he pretty much organized all the cutscene stuff, and I think he did a good job. We were on a super limited time, and we were trying to get some sort of story into like a high octane game that couldn't get in the way of the players. So I think given our constraints, we did good. I sometimes think about maybe putting like audio logs or text logs in the game for people to find to flesh out the world a bit. It's not obvious to me that's what people really want. To be honest, I'm still not sure how the heck I'd tell a story in a game that's fast paced. Superhot had a pretty fast paced game, and it had like all these kind of story elements that worked out. And I think there was some speedrunner game that came out. Neon White also told a story and had characters people seemed to like. So it's possible. I just don't think with cons- like my budget constraints and time constraints, I don't think I could have pulled it off like those bigger, more well-funded studios did.
Did you add infinite slow-mo as sort of a handicap to give players like an easier way to play when starting out with Severed Steel?
Probably. I mean, slow-mo in general, slow-mo is cool, but it's also like a really easy way to like balance difficulty. Like it was my first game. Like, what are the chances I was gonna get everything right? So slow-mo, and I didn't intentionally think about it like this. Like I just put slow-mo in because it's cool. But I think in the end, a generous amount of slow-mo really helps players have fun. And like, I maybe didn't like perfectly balance every combat encounter. I didn't perfectly balance every enemy. but a lot of that can be solved by just giving the player slow-mo. Um, so I never was intentionally like, hey, we need a lot of slow-mo to make it easier on players. It was more like just through like the constant adjusting to players' feedback. What ended up working best was just giving a generous amount of slow-mo. So I think we kind of naturally reached that point through all the testing.
Because I when I first booted up the game, I was like, I'll do medium difficulty. I'm a gamer. I've been, using the controller since I was a kid.
Yeah.
And
Uh-huh.
then I got to level 2 and I'm like, nope, easy, infinite
Oh
slow-mo.
no.
Let's try again.
So are you a big shooter gamer? Like what's your genre?
Honestly, I'll bounce around from a lot of different genres. But I do enjoy FPSs, but I'm not great if I'm being honest. I'm
Yeah.
really not.
So one thing a surprising people don't learn this from the tutorial. Do you know that when you're in a stunt, bullets always miss you? Like did that mechanic sink in?
Yes, that is the
Okay,
only
cool.
reason I think I got as far as I did. I literally just felt like I was in. It's almost as if I had a snowboard when I was gliding around the map,
That's
trying to
funny.
avoid
Funny.
bullets.
Yeah. Yeah. Funny connection there. Uh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's not some people, and it's funny. Some people say the game is way too easy, and they say it's trivial. And yeah, some people they need to play it on the easiest difficulty. I have no idea why that is. Probably just to play. Every individual has different skill sets and different things they
Oh,
focus on.
I just can't hit shit. That's my problem. I'll get the shotgun point
Got
blank
it.
and I'll just miss, and then he'll kill me, and I'm like, thank you, I
Oh,
appreciate that
geez.
one. So, but I started getting the hang of it as as the levels started to progress.
Sure, sure.
So, tell me more about the development, because quick time schedule, getting a publisher, how did that whole story work out while making Severed Steel? Because this to go from a teacher who hadn't developed a game to publisher, that seems like quite an intense journey you went on.
Yeah, the way I kind of look at the development, there were like two stages. Each was a year long. Like the first year was me working on the game around like I had a job at the time and I would just work on the game either before work or after work, depending on what my schedule was that day. And then the second stage was when I found my publisher Digerati and they funded me and let me quit and work on the game full time. And that took about a year. So it was like a year working as a hobby and then a year working full time. So um, I just kind of, I mean, as far as how I made it happen, having no experience, I mean, the amount of resources out there on the internet to like either assets to buy, like weapon models or what, or sounds or textures, or like to communities to learn, be it like YouTube tutorials or the Unreal Slackers Discord, which was actually recently renamed Unreal Source. So many very helpful people here who can really help you with really obscure, corners of the engine that are pretty hard to understand at first and really hard to debug crashes. Um, yeah, just like the strong community around Unreal is really what made it happen. Like I don't know if I had to make all the textures myself, all the models myself, all the sounds myself, I'd probably still be working on the game. Uh, so yeah, so just the internet. Thank you, internet.
How was coverage and reception when you launched the game?
Good. I can't complain. Like we hit like over 90% positive reviews on Steam pretty much immediately, and we've been at 94 ever since, holding steady. I mean, I would love to get to freaking 95% because that's the overwhelmingly positive category, and that's just been so elusive. No matter how much content I shove in the game, we just hover at 94%. So I can't complain. I mean, sales were strong. People like the game. There's people who still play it today. Even some of the original purchases are still hopping in to fight it out on the leaderboards and to build levels. So I really can't complain about the reception.
Did you get a nice boost of players when Epic Games gave away your game for free?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers on hand. I bet I could look it up. But yeah, I mean that was huge. Yeah, I haven't, to be honest, I'm so bad with the numbers and analytics part of it. I really should look at I should compare the amount of players on Steam to the amount of players on Epic and see like, because it's funny, like free games on Epic are a big deal. I think a shocking amount of people would rather buy a game on Steam than get a game for free on Epic. People love Steam. Um, there's a lot of Epic players, but my gut feeling is that there's still more Steam players, even though it costs money on Steam.
That's fair. Like, it's just the Epic launcher is just so fucking dog
It's
shit.
brutal. It's brutal, and even you also have to use the launcher to launch Unreal Engine. So I still have to freaking battle with that thing every day. You think they could figure it out with that Fortnite money of theirs, but and
Especially.
also
Oh,
go
sorry.
on.
Continue.
Well, Epic had a big round of layoffs today. I'm seeing on
Oh shit!
Twitter.
Really?
Yeah, tons of people. I mean, I don't know if it's actually tons. By my cursory glance at Twitter, it's just a constant stream of people saying they've been laid off. I don't know how many, but it seems like a big deal. I'm sure we'll see it develop over time.
I just don't really get how Epic has decided they want to compete with Steam, and then their launcher just is not up to par. Like I remember when it first launched, didn't it not have a search bar for you to look up the games that you wanted to buy, or was it that it didn't have the search bar for your library?
That sounds about right.
It
I've never really used it, so I don't know.
I have a lot of free games on Epic. I mean, I don't always play all of them because I'd rather be in Steam. It's just the launcher itself is really slow and like it chugs, which is
Yeah,
just, not a launcher is a barrier, like it's like before you get to the game you want to play, and I don't want to feel like I'm swimming through
yeah,
molasses to get to the
yeah.
experience that I want.
Yeah, it's not, and like Steam is so like it feels like part of Windows. Like it feels very like built into everything. Whereas you launch Epic and it's got this whole like different design language. It's all like it's its own thing. Everything's so big. It's just weird. I don't know. It doesn't feel like a platform that you'd want to like browse every day. Which Steam's just fun to browse in. Epic doesn't have that same feeling. Sorry, Epic. I love. I mean, I love Epic at the same time because they made Unreal Engine. So uh, I still love you, Epic. But
They
that
are a
launcher's.
staple in for game development, especially now that Unity has kind of shit the bed a little bit.
I know there's so many goings on in the games industry. I started Unity years ago and for whatever reason bounced off it. But there's another universe where I made Severed Still in Unity, but not this one.
Was it scary making that transition to quit your job to go into the games industry and now you're a professional game developer?
Not really. I mean, I like big changes like that, and I've always been an optimist. Um, and it's not like, I didn't have any like if I had like kids or something, it may have been scary, but I don't have any dependents, so I was pretty comfortable just going for it. I had some money saved. Um, and I've always wanted I've never liked having to show up at a job, having to be there at a time and do a thing for X amount of time. I've always wanted to work independently. So it was really an opportunity that I could not turn down. So I'd say way more excited than scared.
Were any of your students excited for you to hear that you were going to be developing a game full time now?
So it was kind of I actually I quit. There was a job I did between teaching and this. I worked at a hospital for a while too, just because teaching's fun, but I was getting sick of teaching.
That's fair. I
It's
did
an
it for
ex Yeah.
6 months and then I was like, I'm
Okay.
out.
Yeah. So there was another job. I left teaching to work at a hospital for a bit where I wasn't like a medical professional. I did like computer stuff at the hospital. And then that was just pretty much right around then Corona started a few months later, but which is double good that I wasn't a teacher then because teaching and Corona seemed like a nightmare. But no, I didn't leave teaching directly. There was like one short job between them. Although I've had students reach out to me over like LinkedIn and like Gmail and just be like, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, like I work on games now," which I think is pretty cool. But no, I didn't like jump right probably didn't just jump ship right away.
So has Severed Steel been taken off a little bit? Because I've been seeing from your Twitter that you're going to be doing, development more, and I've been seeing, some people make the rounds. Like I've seen reviews coming out on Twitter, and it seems to be doing, at least the algorithm seems to be favoring Severed Steel a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, algorithm. I love the algorithm when it works for me, and when it doesn't work for me, I hate it and it's evil. Yeah, we had our 2 year anniversary recently, and I got the rights to distribute the game. I own them, so I had a publisher before, but we've since parted ways, and I have the rights to sell the game on my own now and distribute it how I would like. So it's kind of put the wind in my sails, and I'm making updates for it again. I added a bunch of new levels last month, and I added a new daily challenge mode. So like every day you log in, there's like a new challenge posted on the main menu, and a new leaderboard for each daily challenge, and you can beat the challenges to unlock weapon skins. Next month, I have some more stuff, some more fun features coming, and so yes, ever still the updates are coming back. There's been a spike in player counts, and it's hard for me to figure out now, like how much do I wanna. People still care about Severed Steel. I still care about Severed Steel. I'm working on some updates, and I have to figure out when do I want to shift focus back to Echo Point Nova, because people are also looking forward to that, and I want to get that shipped. So yeah, Severed Steel's back. And I'm not really sure how much to throw myself into that when I've got 2 games going right now.
So, any reason that you decided to part ways with your publisher?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I could share. Uh, it's probably not wise for me to share anything now, especially now that we're still negotiating things and stuff.
No, I understand. Keep it
Um,
amicable, kind of thing.
yeah, it's. I mean, you can just Google. I haven't said anything publicly, but if you Google each of us, you could probably just see the general vibes. But I haven't said anything publicly, and unless anything changes, I don't plan to. But yeah, I just no comment for the time being.
Understandable. I will not press you on the issue. So, when did you you put out Severed Steel? Did you just take a breath, or were you like, all right, next project, let's go?
Kind of. I mean, I pretty much I took a like half a week off or something, and then I started working on Severed Steel updates. And it's not clear to me when I started Echo Point Nova. It was maybe like a month after Severed Steel, just working on it on the side. Because my ultimate goal as a game developer is still to make an open world RPG. And Echo Point Nova did after I finished Severed Steel, I'm like, okay, maybe I have the chops to make an open world RPG. And I'm not quite to that level yet, but I do want to continue pushing in that direction, which is why I started this open world RPG project, and then when I realized I wasn't quite ready to make an RPG, I was like, well, what if I kind of give it like a Severed Steel feeling combat in an open world? And that's how Echo Point Nova came to be, where it's just like it's a way for me to practice building an open world game, but still have some like the familiar rock of like arena combat to make it not too risky and to keep it in my wheelhouse.
Because for me, I love snowboarding games, and then I'm like, okay,
Oh,
this guy's
nice.
got like a cool movement with like a hoverboard, and then you whipped out a shotgun and shot a dude. I'm like, follow, gotta see what's going
Oh,
on.
lovely, lovely. Was that where'd you see that? Twitter or where'd you
Twitter, yeah, I just browsed for
nice.
new devs, and that popped up on my feed, and then I saw you were the dev of Severed Steel as well, and I was like, oh wait, Epic gave that for free. I can get this guy on the podcast. Here we go.
There you go. Here I am. Cool.
So when did you decide you wanted to whip out a fucking snowboard in a game that's a movement shooter?
Yeah, well, I wanted a way for the player to move super fast, and I had how like all first person shooters have the cool slide you can do now if you sprint and then crouch you slide.
Yep.
Yeah, and like Apex Legends lets you do that. Like you can go down a hill like that. And I was thinking like, well, that's a really cool way to get around quickly. But that only really works downhill. Like, what if I could just slide anywhere I want, wherever I want? That would be a pretty fun way to get around quickly. And I was like, well, like what would justify that in the world? Like, well, like hoverboard slide, and they self-propel, so you can do that up a hill if you want. And then it just made sense to just like one thing I learned from Severed Steel is like the more intuitive you can make everything, the better. So like I just made hoverboard just essentially be the game's sprint. So any gamer who's familiar with pressing sprint to go fast will just immediately understand how to use a hoverboard. And yeah, it just kind of naturally came out of like the desire to let the player go really fast whenever they want.
So the demo is, I want to say, linear. It's like one of those where there's a straight line of where you need to go, but how you get there is very varied. Are you
Yeah.
planning to make it more open world in the future, or is the demo going to be demonstrative of how the structure of the game is going to go forward?
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to figure out now. I think a linear demo was helpful because it's a good way just to like teach the players everything to kind of make sure people see everything the game has to offer. Um, but I do wonder ultimately at the end of the day it's like what's more fun and what gets the players, into it more. Like what design is better for that and what am I capable of doing with my time? So I do want to like prototype. My goal is to take the demo and to like kind of rearrange the islands so that they aren't so linear, and so it's more like go where you want in any direction you want and see how that feels. What it ultimately might, what I might end up doing is some sort of combo of them both, where it's just like there's maybe like a linear series of biomes the player's confronted with, but each biome is like a little open area. So like it's like a chain of like open areas. So you get a little bit of both worlds. You can get like sense of progression you get from a linear experience, but you also get the ability to kind of go in any direction you want. So I guess I'm gonna I'm gonna mess around with open world, see how people like it. It's pretty easy for me to like move stuff around in the world, so it's not too arduous to try different shapes. And if people like the open world, I'll go with it. But if people are like, I don't know what to do, I'm not sure what I'm doing, give me some purpose here, I might stick to the demo. Because a lot of people seem to be completing the demos. Like a lot of people are getting the 100% demo achievement. So I think the format of the demo works if I have to fall back on it, but I do want to explore something more open.
And are you also planning to experiment with more story in this one?
Yeah, I mean, certainly this game will almost certainly have logs of some point. Probably not audio logs, probably just text logs. Um, we'll see what happens. I mean, a lot of players barely even read. The demo has some text logs. A lot of players barely even read them. I know that some players stop and read them, and some players even appreciate them. So I think most likely in-world text logs and maybe some sort of a more prevalent villain, although that still remains to be seen. My focus is so on gameplay that like I don't think about story till like the end. Maybe I should change that, but for now, text logs and maybe something more if I feel inspired.
Was there anything immediate that you learned from the demo that you were just like, I need to change or add?
I mean, a lot of the things I changed, there were a lot of things like weapon balance, like in the very first demo, the shotgun and like rifle were a little too weak, and like the rifle's recoil was way too high. Um, a lot of the way some of the co-op mechanics, like there was no way to revive your friend if they died in one of the showpiece battles. They said to watch and they said to wait till the people who were alive either all died or finished the battle. And watching people stream that, it was really like a bummer. Like it was painful just to watch it. I can only imagine how it felt to play. Yeah, so I pretty immediately let people revive their friends. And some of the visual, like um, some people thought the visuals were too blocky. So this version of the demo, the world's a little smoother. It's less. It was very cubic before, like Minecraft, and people weren't really into that. So I made it a little more smooth. There's a lot, yeah, like a lot of little things. But there was nothing like super fundamental that had to be changed. People generally seem to like the overall game loop. There was a lot of little things that I had to improve for people.
How is there anything radical in the final piece that's going to be like really different from the demo?
Yeah, I mean, I'm prototyping like boss enemies, and I'm really you can see some tweets I made about it, some prototypes of like huge colossi enemies where they're like these giant enemies, like as big as like the enemies themselves are essentially moving levels. Like they're you can use your sledgehammer and you can like cut a hole in them and like climb inside of them. Like they're like these big statues you can grapple on. And there's like enemies inside them. So like this Colossus is like walking around and you're like surfing on them and like fighting enemies on them. So yeah, I'm prototyping that now. I'm thinking like each biome will have one Colossus, and that'll mark like you finishing the biome. So and then just in general, just like a lot more stuff. Just like there's gonna be a lot more weapons, a lot more abilities to find, a lot more biomes, a lot more different like types of arenas. So yeah, just like and a lot more enemy types, just like regular enemy types, mech enemies and guys on jetpacks and all sorts of different types. So just like there's just going to be more of everything, more variety to everything, and hopefully, if it works out, the giant colossi enemies to fight. So yeah, there's a lot of surprises left in store.
What lessons did you learn from Severed Steel that were an immediate takeaway when going forward with Echo Point Nova?
Yeah, I mean, focusing on like intuitive controls is big. Like, try to have as little key presses as possible to like get to the fun, and just like really focus on like player catharsis. Like, make everything feel great, make shooting feel great, moving feel great. Have all sorts of nice sounds and particle effects and ways of like triggering the player's dopamine. Have a nice having a lot of menu options, like a lot of like requests for graphics features and control features. I lifted straight from people suggesting from Severed Steel, like all like whatever, like even stuff like a frame rate cap. Like Severed Steel didn't have that at first, so all sorts of like I just remembered things people asked me to add to Severed Steel and was sure just to have them in Echo Point Nova right away.
Did you reuse any assets or code when making Echo Point Nova to help speed up development?
I tried to um pretty much start fresh because Severed Steel was my first project. A lot was messy. Um, I mean, I certainly like built on ideas, but I rarely, if ever, like copied and pasted code.
Sometimes I do that. I'm just like I'm not willing to do this. Just throw this back in. It'll work.
Uh, I didn't know. Oh, I didn't know you were a game developer. I didn't do my proper research on you.
Just some really
What is it?
small stuff, but the
Oh,
icon
cool.
that you're looking at is for like a 30-page text RPG that I wrote for people to play.
Oh, nice, nice. So, okay, so you do like tabletop game design?
That and I do some code stuff as well. I
Oh, cool.
haven't. I started picking up Godot because I thought Unity was a little rough, and then, well, so I'm kind of happy with the choice I made.
Oh yeah, especially after this past month. People seem to like Godot. How is it pronounced? Godot? Godot?
I'm pretty sure it's Godot. I've heard
Godot?
most people call it Godot, and the
Okay.
very first time I saw Godot, I was like, "That's disgusting. I'm not calling it that."
Godot. Well, people seem to like it. It seems to be very like easy to work, or at least nimble. Like launching Unreal Engine takes like an hour. Not an hour, but it's a heavy beast. It seems like Godot is just like
That
very
is,
lightweight.
I think, one of the biggest determining factors because
Yeah.
with Godot, it was just kind of like I just double click and it's right there. While Unity, it's like, okay, I'm gonna go make like a tea and I'm gonna come back and then my
Yeah.
game's gonna be booted up and then I gotta boot up two versions because I have like all my old projects or like the tutorial project open so I can like see what I was doing previously and it's just I can't stand it. It's too hefty.
Yeah, Unreal. I mean, I love Unreal, but yeah, opening up a project is a doozy for sure.
But so let me see. What other questions are? What's with the hats in the Echo Point Nova? What drove you to
Yeah,
add those?
because it's just like something. For it's something to find in the world, and there's the co-op aspect, so it allows you to like whatever, like express yourself a bit with your friends. Um, yeah, it was just like why not? People seem to like hats. Some people get excited about it. Some people are like, I don't care. If you don't care about them, you can ignore them. But if you care about them, they're there for you.
Because I picked up one of the first ones, which is like a headset, and I was like, oh, is this like an item for me to use? And I kept trying to figure out, and then I realized, oh, it's a
No,
hat. Okay.
it's the cosmetic. Does nothing.
I did feel nice when I was like, why is there just one island off in the corner and there's just like, have a hat? I was like, nice. I'm never going to
That's
wear
it.
it, but nice. I found something.
Yeah, exactly. It's something to find. Finding stuff's fun. That's my thought.
As long as it's not like, I don't know. I do not like how some of the collectibles work in like Assassin's Creed franchise, because it'll be like, if you collect 250 of this collectible, you'll unlock a color palette. I'm like, what the fuck is happening?
Oh, yeah. I mean, gee, yeah, I don't want it to be a drag. Like, I hope the hats enhance the experience. I hope they don't ruin it for anybody.
So, I think I managed to get through all my questions, really. This is going to be somewhat of a short. Is there any stories you want to leave off when it comes to Severed Steel or Echo Point Nova?
I mean, I'm just thankful for anyone who plays them and anyone who cares enough about my work to listen to me ramble on about it. So, if you're listening, thank you very much. Yeah, that's pretty much it for me.
I will say, how did you get a lot of coverage? Because I'm just kind of impressed that you went from scratch to full-time game developer in 1 year with a successful launch, and now you're doing a second game. That's just kind of a crazy story. Like that's most people's like dream path.
Thanks. Yeah, it's I mean it's a mix of I guess my own work and various YouTubers who picked it up. And yeah, I'll give some credit to Digerati, my past publisher, who, part of a publisher's job is to make trailers, generate content, make sure the game's being posted about. Like there's a Severed Steel, it's got a pretty enormous following on TikTok. I mean, I think at least like 200,000 followers at least.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I mean that was Trey at Digerati's, that was his baby. Um, sorry, 100,000 followers. I lied, 200,000. I doubled it. Still 100,000. That's decent. So yeah, it was just a mix of things. And I mean, to the game's credit, it looks cool in GIFs. Like it's really easy to like make a captivating 5-second clip of the game. You used to do like an upside down. You do a flip and you do a headshot. You do a cool wall runny slide kick move. So the game kind of sells itself with short clips. It's very marketable in that sense. So yeah, it was a lot of factors that all kind of came together. Yeah.
Well, where can everyone find you that wants to be able to locate you, or is there anything you want to shout out? And maybe another developer or a pizza place that you particularly like in your local area?
That's funny. I mean, I won't dox myself about my favorite pizza places, but whatever. I mean, it's easy to find everyone online. Yeah, I mean, thanks to everyone who's, in the credits of my game, everyone who helped publish it. I'm wary to name specific people just because I don't want to like forget anybody, but I mean, you know who you are if I'm calling you out now. Thank you for everything you did to help me. Um, yeah, and you can find me on Twitter. I have a Severed Steel, one account called Severed Steel, one Matt WLA. Where's kind of where I post about Echo Point Nova. And yeah, wishlist follow on Steam. That's huge. Feed the algorithm. That's huge. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I'll post all the links in the description, and I'll see you guys on the next Paper Prototypes podcast. Bye!
Thank you. Bye bye.